tremendous love relationship that existed between the Lord and Faustina. And so he found in her a soul that he could impart this tremendous message of mercy, this tremendous, profound, as our Holy Father says, this stupendous attribute of God. To her, he spoke more fully than he had ever seemingly had spoken to a soul before about the power of his mercy and the urgency of this message for our time. Speak to the world of my mercy. Beg your priest, tell your priest to proclaim my mercy. In relation to the 3 o'clock hour, he said to her on one occasion, at 3 o'clock, implore my mercy, especially for sinners. And if only for a brief moment, immerse yourself in my passion, particularly in my abandonment at the moment of agony. This is the moment of great mercy for the whole world. At this time, I will refuse nothing to the soul that makes a request of me in virtue of my passion. Every time 3 o'clock comes, and really we don't have to stick by the clock because it's 3 o'clock somewhere in the world anyway, but at the same time there is a discipline in stopping at around the 3 o'clock hour. Please don't tie yourselves down to the exact minute and second. Really, have that freedom. But in that hour, and we now are coming into this hour of reconciliation, this hour of mercy, which will be so powerful if we just live that prayer, that for at least a moment in this hour, you would, as Sister Breed was calling us today, and calling her blessed now already. That's a bit premature, I think, anyway. Right? But as she was inviting us really to stand and read the Passion and to immerse it, particularly this Lenten time. But if we could just for a moment visualize ourselves at Calvary, and as she said, where do you see yourself? Who are you in Calvary? Who are you? What way are you reacting as you visualize and as you see the beloved Savior hung upon that cross, particularly at this moment of great abandonment when he cried out from his depths, my God, why hast thou abandoned me? That moment of almost near despair. And he says, just come out of yourself and just think of what it was like for me. I am there for you to express the Father's infinite mercy for each of you. And so my heart is pierced and the blood and water flows out at that moment of great mercy for the whole world, not just for ourselves, because we can get so self-centered about our salvation, and God is inviting us to bring the whole world into our prayer. And all the prayers of divine mercy have that universal aspect to it. Have mercy on us and on the whole world. Truly divine mercy is for all. I will refuse nothing to the soul that makes a request of me in virtue of my passion. Now, in virtue of his passion, let us pray the prayer, the 3 o'clock prayer. If you don't know, maybe I'll say it because you get distracted trying to find it. Just stay with it. Focusing here on the Lord. Eucharistically present in his glorified presence here. The risen Lord. And just say after me, you expired, Jesus. But the source of life gushed forth for souls, and an ocean of mercy opened up for the whole world. O font of life, unfathomable divine mercy, Envelop the whole world and empty yourself out upon us. O blood and water, which gush forth from the heart of Jesus, as a fount of mercy for us, I trust in you. O blood and water, which gush forth from the heart of Jesus, as a fount of mercy for us, I trust in you. O blood and water, which gush forth from the heart of Jesus, as a fount of mercy for us, I trust in you. And just to draw your attention to those words, I trust in you, as Jesus says, when you have that image drawn of me, sign it with the words, Jesus, I trust in you. You're raring to go here, aren't you? That's great. Okay, but trust is something that we'll hear now. The gospel that we were led to in terms of the theme of this conference, the theme of the conference, as you can see, is come follow me. Not just in the good times. Follow me. It's a call to utterly follow him. And the gospel we were led to was in Matthew 4. I'll read it for you now. From that time on, Jesus began to proclaim his message. Change your ways. The kingdom of heaven is near. As Jesus walked by the lake of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon called Peter and Andrew his brother, casting a net into the lake, for they were fishermen. He said to them, come, follow me, and I will make you fishers of people. They left the nets then and there and followed him. He went on from there and saw two other brothers, James the son of Zebedee and his brother John, in a boat with their father Zebedee, mending their nets. Jesus called them. Then and there they left the boat and their father and followed him. Jesus went all over Galilee, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom, and curing all kinds of sicknesses and disease among the people. The news about him spread throughout the whole of Syria, and the people brought all their sick to him, and all those who had suffered pain, those who were possessed, the deranged, the paralyzed, and he healed them all. Large crowds followed him from Galilee and the 10 cities, from Jerusalem, Judea, and across the Jordan. And this is the gospel of the Lord. Right, well, a large crowd has followed us here today. Is that true? You've heard the call, come follow me, you're here. By hook or crook, you're here. And it's been quite an effort for so many of you to be here. It's a tremendous bit of good news to be able to proclaim that by last Monday all the tickets were sold for this conference, for today. And again, it's good news to recognize that even with that, many more still wanted to come. Because there's a hunger in us. And this isn't a hunger that's just coming just individually, it's coming from a whole people who are seeking and searching for something more in life. Just like they were in the time of Jesus when they were traveling all over the place, coming from the 10 cities. I'm sure we have more than 10 cities represented here today. They come from England, they come from many parts to be here today. And you've come from all parts of Ireland, and you're here. And what the Lord really wills is that word to be accomplished among us here today. It's a living word. So he wants to see this word coming about. All who came to him, the sick and all the rest, were healed. There are many forms of healing. And for each one here today, the Lord says yes, I have a healing for you. As we heard earlier today, my plans for you are peace, not disaster. I am a God of mercy, of compassion. I want to draw you to me. But as you come to me, then you have to begin to let go. The beginning of that passage said, Jesus went around the countryside saying, change your ways. The kingdom of God is near. That word is for us today. Change your ways. And how does it happen? How can we change our hearts? How can we bring about a change? Because a change means two things. It means first that our hearts have to change. There has to be an inner conversion, which has to be then, secondly, expressed in that the ways of our lives change. And the way we live our lives are changed. Many of us would like to change the heart without changing the way our lives are. It reminds me of the story. Robert here, his father is a butcher, and he had a stall here in Dublin, and he's telling him one Saturday afternoon, and there he was, just closing down the shop, and in comes this old lady, and she's looking for the Sunday dinner. Mr. Jordan, says she, have you got anything left? And your man goes in, have you any chickens? And he goes in back to the store, the cold store, and he pulls out a scrawny chicken. He says, that's the last one, missus. And she looks at it. He puts it up on the scales, This is in the good old times before we had television, The chicken was 5 and 6 pence. And she says, missus, I don't know, have you anything else? So off he takes the chicken, goes back inside the store, does this little butcher's trick, puts in the little legs here and tucks it up the legs and, gets it right, brings it out, puts it on the lovely, comes up, puts it on the scales, and the old trick, the hands on the scales as well. And says he, 6 and 6 pence, missus, you see. And she says, oh yeah, I'll take that. And then she says, hold on, I tell you what, I'll take the 2 of them. Did I do all right, Robert? Okay. And that's the way we are. We want the Lord take us, but we want the rest of us to come as well. But he says, please, you have to change. If you're following me, you have to. You see, I will take you, scrawny and all as you are. And I will plump you up. And I will change, I will bring about a transformation in your life. But you must cooperate, and you must leave the scrawny bits behind, Don't be trying to hang on to them all the time, And very much the theme of today is, change your ways. What happened when Jesus called the disciples? Who were the first 2 he called, by the way? Who was listening? Peter and Andrew. Oh, the front row are always good for an answer anyway. All right, you knew it at the back as well, I'm sure. But Peter and Andrew were the first to come. And somehow, there they are fishing, and then he says, come follow me. And what did they leave? They left their nets. They left everything. Now that was a huge, huge change. The only thing they knew was fishing. And yet somehow, when the Lord calls them, when Jesus calls them, something is happening in their heart and their whole being that they're letting go. And somehow they trust him. They trusted this call. And they said, here, we leave this. He's calling us to something new. And they knew in their hearts something better. How many of you today can testify to that? As Father Kevin was speaking, as Father Bob was speaking, as Sister Breach was speaking, that something was stirring in your heart. Because the Lord's been working all through in your preparation for this week and now, this day. Something was stirring. Somehow you were hearing a call. Am I right? Oh, there's only a few. Am I right? Lord, they're listening. Okay. Thank you. And it's that kind of desire to let go and leave everything. Okay, what about the other 2? What were their names? James and John. Okay, so what were they doing? They were mending their nets, you see. They had done the catching and now they were mending the nets to hold around. Right. And what did they do? No, significantly, it doesn't say he left their nets. They left their boat and their father. It was a total call that they left. And as if the gospel is trying to bring out to us, we must leave the things that ensnare us, that we're netted down with, we must leave that behind. We must also leave on the things that we hold on to. This is a total call by the Lord. And right now, he's really calling among us Irish people, among the people of the world, because I'm finding this happening in whatever little travelling I've done. At the hour of mercy, he is really touching the hearts of people who come to confession at that time. And he's somehow making them realize there's certain things I'm holding on to in my life that prevents me from really following the Lord. Maybe I'm trying to do it, as has been mentioned today, do it myself. I'm trying to work it out to perfect myself. And the Lord says, let that go. I am the one who will transform you. I am God. You recognize the power of my mercy, but you must immerse yourself into my unfathomable mercy to see what's between us and God is this ocean of mercy. And he says, come towards me. I am with you. The Father is calling us back with all our hearts. Isn't that what it says down there? Okay, come back with all your heart. And we're just being invited. What is it that ensnares you, that has you netted right now, that you need to let go? What is it that you're holding on to? The boat, the security. What values are you really holding and living? Not the ones you'd like to. Because conversion it's about changing heart. It isn't in changing our ways. It isn't about wishful thinking. It isn't about making promises and not keeping them. Conversion is about following the Lord and actually living it out in our lives. And so he's inviting us today to come before him in the confession and say, what is it that prevents me from following you? There is not one person here that hasn't got something they need to let go so that the Lord can draw them closer to him. For some, it may very well be a way of sin that is there, very real, and you know it. Because one of the things the apostles let go was their relationships. James and John left their father to follow Jesus. It isn't that they were being deprived of their father, they were leaving their father abandoned. Jesus was not like that. But they let go. Are there relationships in your life that you need to let go? That you really need to bring before the Lord and say, that needs to be purified? Have I got a bitterness, a hatred in my heart right now against someone? Maybe going back into my past that I've held on to, that's somehow embittering me, that's preventing me from taking that step forward in freedom because I'm caught in that net of hatred, of bitterness. A real sense too that many of us are caught up with property and possessions, and they mean more to us than following Jesus. Can we let go? I sense there's a bitterness here among some too, of people who have been done out of their inheritance by others, and they've never forgiven what was done to them or to their family. Today is the day to come before the Lord and say, I admit that, I want healing of that, I confess it, I let it go. Many of us are having difficulty with the great inheritance that has been given to us, the inheritance of our Catholic faith. And this is who we've been called to be. And so we want to pick and choose what we like and leave the rest aside and say, well, I don't like that bit. That is not the way to follow Christ. To follow Christ is a total commitment to accepting the teachings that are given to us and to live them. And we have difficulty with that. Of course we all have. And the Lord is saying, the Father is saying, come into the inheritance I have given to you. I called you into this truth and this way and this life through my Son Jesus. But it means you have to let go. You're picking and choosing what you like, and say, Lord, I have failed you. I have sinned before you and before others and before my family of the faith of the church. I have failed. Forgive me. Maybe with many it's a deep criticism that's in us because of hurts we've experienced, and that's preventing us. The cynicism, the apathy, the fears that grip us. As Sister was saying, how many now are afraid to profess who they are? Why should we be afraid to profess who we are? If we are living it, we have nothing to fear. Because if we're living the full Catholic way, then we are truly open to all others. Because that's what Catholic means. It means really being open, having mercy in our hearts for all. As the Lord said to Blessed Faustina, you know, please, what I want is the message to be brought out, that people will do acts of mercy, have mercy in their hearts towards their brothers and sisters, that they will think mercy, and that they will pray mercy. And if we're truly merciful, then our reactions to others will be that as Jesus would react, in mercy. That we would love the sinner while hating the sin. We live in a society where it is happening that they're loving the sin and they're sort of almost making gods out of the sinners. We're asked to love the sinner. And so maybe the aggressiveness that can come out in us as we see what we hold being attacked, and we need to look at that too. Is that the way of mercy? But nonetheless, we are being called to totally follow him, to abandon ourselves to him. Blessed Faustina, in many parts of her diary, speaks about the power of the confession. This is as Sister Breed was speaking about, the Eucharist being the tremendous font of mercy of God. So likewise is the sacrament of reconciliation. And the greater the sin, the greater the call that soul has on the mercy of God. He said to her at one stage, when you approach the confessional, know this, that I myself am waiting there for you. I am only hidden by the priest, but I myself act in your soul. Here, the misery of the soul meets the God of mercy. How can we refuse that invitation if we call ourselves followers of Christ? How can we say, I have no need to go to confession anymore? How can I say that, once a year, I'm sure we have many C of E Catholics around here now. C and E Catholics, not C of E. Do you know what a C and E Catholic is? No? There are plenty of them around. Christmas and Easter Catholics, We don't have so many Easter ones, there are a lot of Christmas ones. But we are very much prone to that ourselves in terms of the sacrament of reconciliation. And here's the Lord saying these. I am there, behind the priest, hidden by the priest, but I myself act in your soul. Do we come with that realization? Tell souls that from this font of mercy, souls draw graces solely with the vessel of trust. And that's what reconciliation. The prodigal son made an act of trust that he could go back to his father, and somehow he would be received. The angry son had great difficulty in making that act of trust. Which are we? Are we really trusting? Are we confessing all those angers that are within us? Are we harboring them, the resentments, or are we letting them go? Because if their trust is great, there is no limit to my generosity. The torrents of grace inundate humble souls. The proud remain always in poverty and misery because my grace turns away from them to humble souls. Just like Jesus was speaking about in the Eucharist, if we're not really welcoming him, he cannot act in us. And if we're not really welcoming him and being open in our confession and really admitting to the roots of our sin, rather than coming with a set laundry list, which we can so easily say, pass off and say, that's me sins. It isn't, because we have to deal, and the Lord wants to heal us at the roots of those sins. Where is it coming from? And bringing that to the Lord, say, Lord, I am a sinner. I have sinned against you, against others. There are people, Lord, that I have not forgiven. I can't forgive. Of course, as a human you can't forgive. It's only his action in us that will enable us to forgive and let go. And he says, but you, in the sacrament of reconciliation especially, have access to that mercy, that divinity of mine, to enable you to forgive. Come, confess, admit your unforgiveness. And in that way, have that desire at least to let it go. And you will find that this grace will be granted to you if you but leave it behind and follow me. Write, my daughter, he said to her on another occasion, that I am mercy itself for the contrite soul. A soul's greatest wretchedness does not enkindle me with wrath. Rather, my heart is moved towards it with great mercy. How are you going to confess? Some are here, God, it's ages since I've been, I wouldn't even know what to say. Right? Okay. The priests are going to spread themselves out around the hall here. You will only have a very brief moment with the priest today, because there are over 3,000 here, maybe 60 priests. Work it out if you're a good mathematician. Even if you're a bad one, you know, we've only an hour. We can't do it. Right? So very, very briefly. But come with something that the Lord will put on your heart if you ask him. That you need to confess. That you need to let go. So that a change can happen in your life. And that you want to follow him 100%. Not just tippy-toeing a little bit the way. Putting the... Okay. Secondly, we're going to say the act of sorrow before you go to confession, so that you won't have to say it when you approach the priest. If you don't know what to say, well, certainly we want you to confess if there are mortal sins, something very serious in your life, please say so. If you say, I don't know what to say that. And say, I have sinned against God and against others. And the Lord will put it on your heart what you need to say. Keep it as brief. In the meantime, while you're preparing for confession, talk it all out with him. Talk to him here. He is truly present here. In this Eucharistic presence, speak to him and talk about all those sins. And give the one that is the biggest block in you following him right now. Is that clear? So your penance will be that you will continue to stay on for this hour of mercy. So you don't have to say your act of sorrow. And in that sense, just one thing, unless there are other major sins, serious things that you need to confess, please do so. Delve into the passion of Jesus at this time. Come away from our own agonies and pains and just for a moment place ourselves in his position on the cross, Gethsemane, wherever. Just be part of his pain. Be part of him as his heart has been pierced open and the blood and water gushes forth.
we believe we know what it's like to have our own hearts pierced from time to time. But do we know what it was like for him, the Son of God? And so we immerse ourselves in his passion so that he can fulfill in us his promise to Faustina. Whatever you ask for in this hour of mercy, I will grant you. So with his passion in mind, we say the words he taught Faustina to say at this hour. You expired, Lord Jesus, but the source of life gushed forth for souls, and the ocean of mercy opened up for the whole world. O font of life, unfathomable divine mercy, envelop the whole world and empty yourself out upon us. O blood and water, which gush forth from the heart of Jesus as a font of mercy for us, we trust in you. O blood and water, which gush forth from the heart of Jesus as a font of mercy for us, we trust in you. O blood and water, which gush forth from the heart of Jesus as a font of mercy for us, we trust in you. And we just inviting you, as the Lord is inviting each one of us, as he has been through the talks that we've been listening to this morning, to come away from our own selves, to focus on him, on this almighty love, that love that knows no boundaries, no conditions, that is here for us. And he wishes us to come with expectation, with hope and belief that he loves each one of us right where we are. And if we could come to confession today with that sense, I'm going not to get rid of my sins, I'm going to receive God's love. That's what I'm going for today. I'm going to receive his love. I'm going to allow it and want it and desire it to enter into me. Then we will have caught something of the spirit of the gospel which has led us to choose this title of Rise Up, Take Heart, He is calling you. We read the gospel at our morning prayer this morning, and our speakers have referred to it through the morning. But let's listen again, because now the invitation is to each one of us. It's taken from the Gospel of Mark, chapter 10. They came to Jericho, and Jericho is known as Sin City. So you came to Dublin. Don't add the other bit. It's true. We're all sinners in Dublin. I don't know what you're like down the country. However, they came to Jericho, and as Jesus was leaving Jericho with his disciples and a large crowd, a blind beggar, Bartimaeus, the son of Timaeus, was sitting by the roadside. On hearing that it was Jesus of Nazareth passing by, he began to call out, "Son of David, have mercy on me." Many people scolded him, telling him to be quiet. But he shouted all the louder, "Son of David, have mercy on me." Jesus stopped and said, "Call him." So they called the blind man, saying, "Take heart, rise up, he is calling you." He immediately threw aside his cloak, jumped up, and went to Jesus. Then Jesus asked him, "What do you want me to do for you? The blind man said, Master, let me see again. And Jesus said to him, go your way. Your faith has made you well. And immediately he could see, and he followed Jesus along the road. The gospel of the Lord. And this is a living word, and this gospel has been lived now with us today, this moment. Jesus is here in the midst of us. And we have the same call to faith to believe. Do we believe that that is Jesus there in the monstrance? Remember Sister Concilio saying about her young addicts who had no comprehension about the presence of Jesus in the Eucharist. Tell us, sister, what's that about? Many of us of the golden, of the older generation, should I say, I was going to say golden oldies, but however, we might know a little bit about who this is. We might know that this is Jesus. But just like that large crowd that were following Jesus that day, they had some sense of who he was. But they had no sense of the heart of love that was in Jesus. They had no sense of what it meant and what it means when Jesus says, the blood and water flowing out upon the world as a font of mercy. And in a moment, when you go to confession, you will be meeting a priest. And we priests have the difficulty, maybe to a large extent, that you have. That we have to listen again and again and again to the words he said to Faustina. Approach the priest. Listen to him. Remember that behind me, behind the priest, I am. And so we approach in that faith. Now, on that day, when this large crowd heard this blind man calling, they were saying their focus was totally off Jesus. Their focus was on the nuisance that was distracting them. That nuisance was a man crying out in his pain, in his faith, in his desperation. A man who was in the lay-by, not on the way, but rather isolated because of his blindness. And we heard the beautiful testimony of Father Pat today, how in his blindness God spoke differently to the way, and acted differently in one way than he did to the blind man here, Bartimaeus, the son of fear. It might be a rough translation of his name. Have no fear. He cried out, and he had no fear this day. He had a change of heart within him, so that he cried out, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. And you notice, he's not saying, heal me. He's saying, have mercy on me. He's not saying, heal my eyes. Just notice me. Be aware of me. Because everyone else is rejecting me. And at that moment, the crowd are scolding him and saying, go away, you're a nuisance. You're distracting me. And now comes the time when Jesus stops and says, I see you. I notice you. Bartimaeus, I notice you. You are important to me. Never mind the crowd who are calling him a nuisance, a distraction. Just listen to me, Bartimaeus. And Bartimaeus recognizes and experiences the heart of love. That when Jesus says, call him, he rises up, and you can see the urgency, and suddenly the crowd have changed. The crowd have realized, hey, something's going to happen here. And they also begin in some way to realize, we've been rejecting this person. Just as we reject the handicapped, just as we reject all the people. And think back in your own life right now. Who do you see as a nuisance? Who do you see as someone who's aggravating you? And Jesus says, call him. Call her. I love her. I love him. Be aware, even now, as I say, that this is a living word. It's happening even as we are gathered here. And are we, who sense are the large crowd, are we going to change our attitudes? Or are we going to say, you're still a nuisance, you're still a nuisance, get away, get away. On that day, they heard the voice of Jesus call him, and they somehow recognized here was love, pure, unconditional love, calling. And they allowed that to touch them, that they too began to change. And it's revealed in the words they say to this man, rise up, take heart, he's calling you. They certainly weren't calling him before this, but now they wanted to be a part. And we who have maybe at some stage taken that stand and looked down on others, and how easy it is for us. We recognize our own misery, but we say, thank God I'm not as miserable as that lot, or them, or him, or her. And we do not see what love can do. Remember Concilio talking about how so many people reject themselves. What they need is love, the transforming love of Christ. And we are here today, and we are being invited to allow Jesus to become as close to us as he came to that man. Because he came with urgency. He didn't hold back. He threw off his cloak. He jumped up. He says, I believe. It's like as if he knew before he ever got to Jesus that something was going to happen for him. He knew it. He believed in the love of God. And now he calls. And when he stands before Jesus, it's like as if they've known each other for life. Jesus talking to him, what can I do for you? Didn't you hear the echo of that today? When Jerry was talking about how he saw the heart of Jesus and the rays, and he began to understand that in the midst of his dreadful pain and his whole thing about his family, that God understood him and that he could open his heart. And how, while the pain wasn't taken from him, he could in fact see it in a different way. I sense this man did not approach Jesus to be healed of his blindness. He approached Jesus so that he could take a new look and a new way of dealing with his marginalized situation. And we heard how Father Pat saw himself both as the blind beggar and saw himself as the crowd. Because now His heart was changed by God's love. And he now is proclaiming to us so powerfully the love of God. And we heard Sister say to us, the Cún Mire is for everyone who needs it. Remember the story she told about Marie and her husband, and how Marie would keep saying to her alcoholic husband, what can I do for you, love? These are hearts touched with the love of God. Have we got that heart of love? Maybe we haven't. But God's saying, I can give it to you today. What do you want me to do for you?
All the obstructions.
Right. And so we have to look for the obstructions that prevent God's love entering. And we have to bring them to him. Believing first that he loves us. And we're going to him not in the way of just getting rid of our blindness, but rather that we can understand our blindness and let his love change our hearts. So if there's resentments in your heart, if there's prejudices within you against people, certain people, prejudice in your